any second now. We'll be getting folks on board. We got about 3 minutes until the show begins. We're going to talk a little bit about the media. The media is now the story, and the media continues to make themselves the story. So we'll be talking about the media coming up in this first segment. Then at the bottom of the hour, it's always great to have Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon on. We're going to be talking with Joey McCutcheon and attorney Matt Bishop about the motion to dismiss. This is concerning the Ecclesia College and everything else. They have really been the attorneys representing their client on somebody that wants to know. Well, I mean, there's just been we'll recap the whole thing because it's complicated. It's complicated, and it centers around this Arkansas corruption and centered around John Woods and Mike and Neil and Randall Shelton, who are now, they either pled guilty or they were found guilty. And it has to do with whether or not we can figure out where our taxpayer money is spent. Where did it actually go? And we'll talk to these men about that. And the current news that came out last week about it. And then at the top of the next hour, we're going to be talking to. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Washington County Quorum Court. A newly elected member, Patrick Deakins, will be on the program. And love Patrick. Patrick's been on before for our conservative future segments, our young conservative segments. So it's always great to have him on. And then Randy Alexander. Randy Alexander, former state representative, will be on the program at 7:33 this morning. We'll be talking to him about the convention of the states. I understand this week at the Capitol, Tom Coburn is going to be down there, former senator from Oklahoma. Yeah, convention of states. I know, it's a very controversial thing among conservatives. Among conservatives, it is. But we will have him on, and he's going to talk a little bit about Tom Coburn coming to Arkansas, and I'm sure we'll have a great discussion. The show starts in less than 30 seconds.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Good morning to everybody out there. Thank you so much for being with us. We got a lot to get to. I was just going over the schedule for today's program, the lineup. We'll be talking with attorneys Joey McCutcheon and Matt Bishop coming up here in 30 minutes. Then we'll be talking with newly elected Justice of the Peace from Washington County, Patrick Deakins, at 7:05 about transparency in government. And then former state representative Randy Alexander at 7:33. We'll be calling in to talk a little bit about Tom Coburn, former senator and convention of states, which is, again, I said just a second ago, controversial, but we're going to talk about it anyway because we like controversy here. And we want to thank you for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, if you didn't know that. Also, well, let's just get to the big story. The media. The media is the story. The media keeps making themselves the story, and they just keep making it worse. And boy, they were caught. They were caught over the weekend in a bombshell. It was Friday night, right? Yeah, Friday night. We essentially have. Let's go to this Fox News story first, shall we? Okay, so Trump's a KGB agent, whatever. He's also committed perjury, according to the left. So there's this BuzzFeed story. You guys have heard the story by now, but I'll recap the weekend. BuzzFeed story comes out and says that Donald Trump told his lawyer, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress. Okay, that he told him to do it, which makes no sense. That all has to do with a Trump Tower project in Russia that never ever, when did you stop pursuing it? Was it in January 2016 or June 2016? And the story didn't make any sense. It's from BuzzFeed. It didn't make any sense because Donald Trump Jr. He got the date correct, and it wouldn't, and he had already testified to that. So it wouldn't make any sense that Donald Trump Jr. would tell the truth, and then Trump would then tell his attorney to lie about when, because we already knew when the project ended. I think in June 2016 is when they quit pursuing it. Whatever. Bottom line is, this was a ridiculous story, and the media was just, they looked ridiculous when Robert Mueller came out, the special counsel, and said the story is not accurate. Okay, so the media has egg all over its face. They look ridiculous. Okay, you had Jeffrey Toobin on CNN say, well, it was like somebody had killed his dog. Jeffrey Toobin over at CNN, he I'm paraphrasing, but he said, people are going to say that this is just a leftist media that wants to attack the president, and because this story, and you had all these networks running it, impeachment. Oh, he's going to be impeached this time. He's going to be impeached this time. And Jeffrey Toobin, they literally think that they're still objective now. I mean, they honestly think that they are still objective reporters, and that the people like me that know that they're leftists, know that they have an agenda. Well, we're just going to use the fact that you got a story wrong and you ran with it for 24 hours, 48 hours, and you were telling them, this is it. We finally got him. We finally got a way to remove President Trump. Anyway, and then Robert Mueller comes in there and basically, it's a shock. It's a shock that Mueller was like, the story's not accurate. Sorry, guys, it's not accurate. I don't know what to tell you. So the media was the story, and they were extremely bruised. I mean, it was a terrible day for the mainstream media. They were exposed as being not news people, but the media is just they're attempting to brainwash the public. That's what it is. They are brainwashers. So what do? Well, they look for the next story. They look for the next thing to get clicks, and they once again get a big story wrong, and now they're trying to ruin a bunch of high school kids' lives. But I just want you to understand that's why it blew up to such a big thing, is because they wanted to get away from the fact that they've been wrong for 48 hours and that they didn't get. So you know what? We can't get President Trump, but let's get the high school kids that are wearing the MAGA hats as a consolation prize. We may not get Trump, but we can get them. The best take on this entire thing, if you're just joining us, if you don't know anything that's happened over the weekend, there was the March for Life. There was a national March for Life this weekend, and 200,000 people. Can you imagine that? 200,000 people showed up for the March for Life. There was a surprise address from Pence and from President Trump. So at this time, there's a lot of people there, but there's some kids from a Kentucky Catholic school, and they're wearing these Make America Great Again hats, and they're at the Lincoln Memorial, probably having a good time. And then all of a sudden, this Native American guy comes up and starts beating a drum in their face. And everybody takes pictures, and now these kids, they've been threatened with expulsion because the Catholic school, they're getting their information. It's all wrong. Reason.com, Ravi Sov has the best rundown, I think, out there about really what happened. With the headline, "The media wildly mischaracterized the video of Covington Catholic students confronting a Native American veteran. Journalists who uncritically accepted Nathan Phillips' story got this completely wrong. Partial video footage of students from a Catholic high school allegedly harassing a Native American veteran after the anti-abortion March for Life rally in Washington, D.C. over the weekend quickly went viral, provoking widespread condemnation of the kids on social media. There are also now attempts out there to dox the kids, meaning find out who their parents are, find out where they live. Various media figures and Twitter users called for them to be doxxed, shamed, or otherwise punished, and school administrators said they would consider expulsion. This is all because of the media getting the story wrong. That's the key here. The story is the media. But the rest of the video, nearly 2 hours of additional footage showing what happened before and after the encounter, adds important context that strongly contradicts the media's narrative. Far from engaging in racially motivated harassment, the group of mostly white, MAGA hat-wearing male teenagers remained relatively calm and restrained despite being subjected to incessant racist, homophobic, and bigoted verbal abuse by members of the bizarre religious sect Black Hebrew Israelites, who were lurking nearby. The Black Hebrew Israelites have existed since the 19th century and is best described as a black nationalist cult movement. Its members believe they are descendants of ancient Israelites and often express condemnation of white people, Christians, and gays. D.C. area black Hebrews are known to spout particularly vile bigotry. Phillips, the Native American, put himself between the teens and the black nationalists, chanting and drumming as he marched straight into the middle of the group of young people. What followed was several minutes of confusion. The teens couldn't quite decide whether Phillips was on their side or not, but tentatively joined in his chanting. It's not at all clear this was intended as an act of mockery rather than solidarity. One student did not get out of Phillips' way as he marched and gave the man a hard stare and smile that many have described as creepy. This moment received the most media coverage. It's this moment that they said this white guy is clearly racist because he's got a cap on. Alyssa Milano said that the red MAGA cap, by the way, is the new white hood. The teen has been called the product of a hate factory, likened to a school shooter, segregation-era racist, and member of the Ku Klux Klan. This author goes on to say, I have no idea what he was thinking, but portraying this as an example of obvious racially motivated hate is a stretch. Maybe he simply had no idea why this man was drumming in his face and couldn't quite figure out the best response. It bears repeating that Phillips approached him, not the other way around, which is what they initially reported. Again, the story here is the media. They got slapped down by Robert Mueller, and they basically, look over here. All right, let's make this the big story. And that's that's all there is to it. Okay, so Phillips walked away after several minutes. The Black Hebrew Israelites continued to insult the crowd, and nothing else happened. You can judge for yourself. Here is the video footage of the full incident. Now, we actually have this. You can pull it up, Joe, if you want. Matter of fact, let's look real quick. I've got it marked here. This is the incident where you can clearly see that he walks up. Go ahead, take a look. Listen.
All right, here come Gad. Here come Gad. Here come Gad. Look at our Make America Great Again hats. Look at the hats. Look at the hats. We ain't taking. Look, we not taking. Look at Gad. That's right, Gad. Look at Gad.
See, here's the drummer. Anyway. Yeah, there he is right there. All right, you see what they're doing? Okay, sorry, so stop. And you can watch the full thing and judge for yourself, but it's not at all what the media said it was, right? And I think some of those kids joining in enthusiastically, right? They didn't know at first. But from the perspective of the Black Hebrews or the Black nationalists. Phillips enters the picture around the 112 mark, but you can skip past that part. If you do, though, you're going to miss an hour of the Black Hebrew Israelites hurling obscenities at the students. They call them crackers. They call them the F word, the slang for being gay. They call them pedophiles at the 120 mark, which comes after the Phillips incident. They call one of the few black students the N word and tell him that his friends are going to murder him and steal his organs. At the 125 mark, they complain that you give, once again, the F word for being gay, or the slang word or the slur. Yeah, the derogatory word. You give them rights, which prompted booing from the students. Throughout the video, they threaten the kids with violence and attempt to goad them into attacking first. The students resisted these taunts admirably. They laughed at the hecklers, and they performed a few of their school's sports cheers. It was at this moment that the Native American Phillips, who had attended a nearby peace protest led by indigenous peoples, decided to intervene. He would later tell the Detroit Free Press that the teenagers were in the process of attacking these 4 black individuals, and he decided to attempt to de-escalate the situation. He seems profoundly mistaken. The video footage taken by the black nationalists shows no evidence the white teenagers had any intention of attacking. Nevertheless, Phillips characterized the kids as beasts and the hate group members as their prey. Quote, "There was a moment when I realized I put myself between beast and prey. These young men were beastly, and these old black individuals was their prey, and I stood in between them, and so they needed their pounds of flesh, and they were looking at me for that." Again, all the evidence suggests that Phillips got it completely backwards. He also claimed that he heard chants of "build the wall." While I cannot rule out the possibility that some of the kids indeed chanted this, those who were wearing MAGA hats are presumably Trump supporters. I did not hear a single utterance of the phrase in the nearly 2 hours of video footage I watched. Admittedly, the kids do a lot of chanting, and it's not always possible to tell what they're saying. Their stated explanation is that they engaged in a series of school sports chants. That's what one student told a local news reporter. His account largely tracks with the video. It would be impossible to definitively say or state that none of the young men did anything wrong, offensive, or problematic at some point, and maybe the smiling student was attempting to intimidate Phillips. But there's shockingly little evidence of wrongdoing, unless donning a Trump hat and standing in a group of other people doing the same is now an act of harassment or violence. Phillips' account, meanwhile, is at best flawed and arguably deliberately misleading. Of course it is. Of course it's deliberately misleading. You can check. I would share the Conduit News Facebook just threw this article out there, so you can check it out if you want to share this with your friends. This is an accurate depiction, an accurate, reporter here, Robbie Swove, actually showing you what actually happened there, and it's good. And again, the story is the media. Because you see, if you go over to, let's see, is it Breitbart? It's on the front page of Breitbart this morning, Joe. You don't have this, but left wing and the right attacks kids to demonstrate virtue. People freaked out when the story was misreported. And now these kids' lives are really, who knows, they may be ruined because the left just doesn't ever give up. A lot of blue check-marked individuals on Twitter, and people on the left and the right, to me, some of them. Bill Kristol, never Trump or Bill Kristol, if you can even say he's on the right anymore. But, he came out and just, you can't imagine this, because he's triggered by the fact that you have young kids that are embracing the Make America Great Again. Let me ask you this. You think the Make America Great idea and donning that hat, is that now the counterculture for young people? It's just a thought I had. I think it definitely, the young people typically, they're buying into a counterculture, right? Don't they? It would be wild. It would be wild if that was the case. Let's see here. Breitbart, the whole story just exposes the left for the lying, crying, bullying, vindictive, shrill, ugly hate machine that it is. Let's see. Some guy named Jim Hansen. I realize the usual suspects have already convicted and are ready to crucify these kids, but maybe it's worth looking at the context first. Yeah, definitely. Where's Alyssa Milano here? She said the thing about the pointy hat, that the red MAGA hat is now the pointy hat. Then you have somebody named Brian Krasenstein. Sorry. I don't care if they're minors. They are MAGA hat-wearing pieces of crap taunting a Native American vet. And there you go. This is what the left is all about. The ends justify the means, man. They don't really care. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully there's school. Hopefully there's some sane people at their school that will get the story right, or actually look at, the context of the entire video. Over at the Gateway Pundit, this story, it's a flashback. Before smearing and harassing Catholic children, Native American Nathan Phillips accused frat boys of harassment in a similar event. It's good to remember that. So, you know what I think? I mean, I think it's clear that this was some sort of setup. I think they wanted a story, and they made up a story, but they really wanted a story. I think they wanted those kids to get violent, and so that would then be the story now, right? And keep in mind, this is right after they come out and they start telling you that the BuzzFeed story is true, essentially, and they start telling you that Donald Trump told his attorney to lie and has committed perjury, and then Robert Mueller comes out and says that's not an accurate story. Oh, and the media basically are in mourning. They have little wakes for how inaccurate that they have little pity parties for themselves because they didn't get Trump again. Trump got away again. Well, we'll get him next time. In the meantime, we've got to look over here. Look at that. You got kids with MAGA hats on. I really think another reason is this. I think I'm onto something with this counterculture idea. I think wearing a MAGA hat is now going to be looked at as counterculture, but you're going to have, Hollywood elites and everything else, like Alyssa Milano. No, a red MAGA hat is the new pointy white hat. We'll be back in a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Once again, we have Congressman Bruce Westerman, and it is always great to have him on the program. Bruce, thanks for coming on this morning.
Hey, Paul. Good morning. Good to be with you.
Yes, sir.
Good to be back in Arkansas.
Okay, good. So you're on Central Time now. Well, tell us a little bit about what's going on in D.C. What have you been working on?
Well, if you saw the news yesterday, it seems to be getting more bizarre every day. But, I don't even think this got reported on, but the last vote we had yesterday was a vote to do another continuing resolution to, fund the government and forbid any spending on the border wall, the Democratic motion that they've been trying to pass. And the procedure that normally happens on the
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Speaking of the media making the story all about themselves, look at this. Look at this tweet from Ryan Saavedra, who works for the Daily Wire. I think this is a fantastic photo. Here, go ahead and click on the actual photo. This is CNN's Chris Cillizza, and he says Nancy Pelosi just pulled a major power move on Donald Trump's State of the Union. This was back when Nancy said, "You can't come, don't come to the State of the Union." You know, this was last week. And this is CNN's take after Donald Trump said, "Oh, you can't go on your little trip then." And Chris Cillizza then says, "Taking the low road always." So this is, and then Ryan, Ryan Saavedra is saying, "This is CNN." I mean, they just are activists. That's all they are. They're not journalists, not even close. Folks, tomorrow on the program, we'll be interviewing State Representative Stephen Meeks. He has a bill that he has filed to manage microchipping. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why there's a need for this, and we're going to let Representative Stephen Meeks just take it away. Manage microchipping of Arkansas employees, meaning, you know, some people are worried based on their eschatology that putting microchips in people is not a good thing. So that's tomorrow on the program, and I think that's at 7:33 tomorrow. We're going to take a break and be right back with attorneys Joey McCutcheon and Matt Bishop.
Is you call for a voice vote, and then if nobody requests for the yeas and the nays, then it'll pass based on the decision of the chair. Well, they just called for the voice vote and almost immediately said the motion passes, and didn't give us a chance to even vote. And then a lot of the Democrats just immediately left the chamber, and we were standing in there trying to figure out what to do, and we ended up getting them to at least let us come back and vote on that next week. But unbeknownst to me, Speaker Pelosi and several Democrats were dashing out of the chamber to get on the bus and go to the airport to go to Belgium and Afghanistan and other places, and that's when President Trump sent her the letter, told her that the plane wasn't going to be available. She could fly commercial if she really needed to go.
That was that is definitely some news, some context here. So, do you think they were rushing out of the chamber so that they could get on the plane, or are they rushing out of the chamber because they don't want maybe some Democrats, vulnerable Democrats, they don't want it to be reported that they're now supporting funding for the border wall, and they might have voted against it?
Well, no, there was no funding for the border wall in it. It was a strict Democratic motion, and it was just kind of a sophomore thing to kind of a got you, I think, because without the recorded vote, it looks like the bill passed the House with no opposition.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I mean by that is what I was thinking is, was there a chance that there would be a Democrat somewhere that would vote with the Republicans in the dissent? That would make headlines. I mean, is there anybody out there in the House, Bruce, that's a Democrat that wants to give Donald Trump what he wants?
I think privately there are probably some, but you're not going to find them out making public statements about it. But I've talked to people that are reasonable and understand that there is a legitimate security issue along the border, that the drugs that are coming across, the human trafficking, that's not good. And this isn't just the president saying this. This is the Border Patrol agencies and other people that are involved in it. And the crazy thing about this, Paul, is they produced numbers. Well, the Democrats wanted to debate the numbers. Was it 3,000 suspected terrorists or
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there was a motion to dismiss dismiss a lawsuit by Preferred Family Healthcare. And this is big news here. And I mentioned Ecclesia College and everything like that at the beginning of the show when I was previewing this interview with Mr. Joey McCutcheon and Matt Bishop. Hey, guys, are you guys on the line? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Paul, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the program. And so if you guys can recap where we are with all of this, specifically start with the new developments about this lawsuit with Preferred Family Healthcare.
All right, Paul, we'll do that, and I'll let Matt jump in here anytime. But in essence, what Preferred Family has said is that we have not alleged any wrongdoing on the part of the state. And I think that it's very clear that we have alleged wrongdoing on the part of the state, whether it's with former Senator John Woods or former Michael Woods or Eddie Wayne Cooper. Matt, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, Paul, and I think what it comes down to is I don't believe we have to, but there are some cases in Arkansas that seem to go both ways, and it's something that the Arkansas Supreme Court's got to decide. If you bribe a legislator, do you still have to allege that the law that distributed the money was wrongdoing and was wrong, illegal? And to me, that's I can't see the Supreme Court coming down and saying it's okay to do that as long as the law was all right. And if you look at the purpose behind this constitutional provision, this was designed for the citizens to act. We don't have to wait on the state. And in this case, you wouldn't want to, because it's the state legislators that are being bribed. So I don't think that the motion to dismiss will stand, but obviously I'm not the judge, and the judge makes that call, and it will go from there.
So let's talk let's talk about the reason. Jim Parsons, you guys are representing him. He's a Benton County resident, and this is an illegal exaction, right? You guys think this whole Preferred Family Healthcare situation was an illegal exaction. What specifically are you referring to?
Go ahead, Bill. Oh, yeah, sure. Illegal exactions is a constitutional provision in the Constitution of 1874. And it basically says, and there's two types. There's an illegal law, and Paul, you and I once talked about the solid waste district case, where I'm saying the way that law is applied is illegal in taxing the citizens. There's also what's called public funds cases. Basically, when the person obtains the funds, when the money is being misapplied or illegally spent, or the money is used improperly. So this is one of those cases where we're saying you didn't allocate tax funds to pay fraudulent medical claims, to bribe legislators, to buy World Series tickets, to pay for lake houses in Carroll County and beach houses in Florida. That's not what our money should go for.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think the average person, I mean, on its face, we know it's wrong. It's just, well, are there going to be consequences from this? Joey, what's your feeling on this? I mean, Preferred Family Healthcare, the state, has eliminated the contract with him at this point. It took them a while to do it. It took them much longer than I think they should have waited, because we were hearing about all of this corruption with Preferred Family Healthcare. And some people think that the feds, basically told Arkansas, look, you will terminate the contract, because it lasted way too long, in my opinion, considering everything we knew about that organization.
Yeah, I think I think as Matt said, sometimes the citizens have to act. And, if you wait on the Attorney General, if she's got a job to do, then Attorney General needs to do the job. Preferred Family, they want to talk in this motion to dismiss about how they're victims. They're victims of alternative opportunities. This other group that they merged with, and how they deceived them. Well, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it that Preferred Family is a victim here. But we shall see.
Well, yeah, they merged with Alternative Opportunities, and then they changed the name to Preferred Family Healthcare, right? Or, I mean, that name, Alternative Opportunities, went away, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Paul, I think you're right, and I think it's and I understand it's hard for people to think of a corporation as legally liable, but we've given corporations all these rights as entities, and I don't think you can say, well, we changed the head, so even though we're the same entity, we have no liability. We've gotten rid of all these bad actors who are acting in our name. Therefore, we've changed. Therefore, we're free of liability. We collected the money as an entity. We used the money as an entity. We authorized, as a board, this spending to these people, paying them these salaries, these exorbitant salaries for a nonprofit. But hey, we were victims as an entity, and that's. I think you saw that with the Wall Street bailout.
Mm-hmm.
The large banks, they say, well, this guy did the bad thing, but not us as the entity. You get to keep on going.
I like that analogy. I like it. It is like a big bank analogy. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I want to remind everybody listening. So, Milton Rusty Russell Cranford, he's at the center of this. He's the lobbyist. He's at the center of all of this stuff, whether it's, connected to Preferred Family Healthcare or John Woods and everything else. And it goes really, really deep. But, he pled guilty. And so when he pleads guilty, he says that he bribed what is believed to be Jeremy Hutchinson, or that Preferred Family Healthcare, bribed, and you went through the little loophole of attorney fees, because he was a state senator and he's also an attorney, $500,000. Okay, so this is why it is a big deal, and so I wanted to have you guys on. I wanted to be clear here. We're talking about taxpayer money, and it's being given, it's being laundered through, from the taxpayer, from the state, to Preferred Family, then for Preferred Family sending it back to a legislator's way to continue to get funding, to get resolutions passed honoring the CEOs of Preferred Family Healthcare, or the COOs. I mean, it just is absolutely ridiculous. And somebody, I mean, I know we have people going to jail, but I think you guys are doing the right thing here, representing Mr. Parsons, trying to pursue this. And not only is it a good thing you're pursuing it, but I think just the whole process will educate more people about, how bad it really was and is right now.
Well, we've got to continue to shine a very bright light on public corruption, and whether it's a scheme of this attorney-client privilege, or this attorney-client scheme of, pumping money in and giving money back to an attorney because they're the lawyer. Similar type features in Ecclesia, in the Ecclesia College case, where you've got a legislator, Bob Ballinger, who is giving public money to this private college in Northwest Arkansas. At the same time, his law firm is representing Ecclesia College. It just doesn't smell right. The appearance of impropriety at a very minimum is there. And we as citizens must continue to shine the light and hold government accountable, or they're going to run amok. I mean, we've seen it in Arkansas. Just not enough accountability. And I think that's one of the things that Matt and I are trying to accomplish as an indirect byproduct of this lawsuit is continue to expose these schemes that are just not appropriate.
We're talking with Fort Smith attorneys Joey McCutcheon and Matt Bishop. They're representing, again, Jim Parsons in an illegal exaction case against Preferred Family Healthcare, this giant healthcare company. Joey, I'd like for you to address where we are right now with the other lawsuit I know you're involved in with Ecclesia, attempting to figure out exactly, all of that money, $700,000+ I think, taxpayer money, GIF money went to this college, and we don't really know exactly how it was spent. I mean, I know people have told, they've told us, but I mean, we'd like to see the documents, right? And Ecclesia says, well, no, we're a private college. We don't have to give you the documents.
That's right. Still haven't gotten the documents that we're seeking. Matt, you may want to speak to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are getting, you kind of get it in drips and drabs, and at the last hearing I noticed the counsel for Ecclesia stood up and said, well, we feel like we've produced all the documents. This case should go away. And the judge responded, they filed the FOI 2 years ago. Why? That's not a defense that 2 years later you give out some documents and declare it done. And I think that's kind of what Joey's been dealing with. And you see the C-file. I know he handles a lot of FOIA cases, and you see that a lot in FOIA cases. Well, now we've done it. Everything's okay. Yes, but we had to file suit to get you to act the right way, and you still haven't completed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Paul, it really speaks to the bigger problem that I hope is going to maybe get some resolution in this legislative session, where legislators don't try to just dismantle FOIA, but in fact they put teeth in FOIA as a law. We're just seeing this more and more often, as Matt has alluded to, where basically these public entities do not give records. I have to file a lawsuit. Some other lawyer has to file a FOIA lawsuit to get the records, and then within days they're producing the records. There needs to be teeth in FOIA. There needs to be stiff civil penalties. Maybe even the criminal penalties should be utilized. Prosecutors across this state need to start punishing these record withholders in a criminal context and get their attention. Because, if you just produce the records after a lawsuit failed and you have to pay some cost or some attorney fees, that's just it's just like thumbing your nose at the public.
I think that would be good to increase the penalties if you don't comply with FOIA. I do think we have to be very, vigilant is what I'm trying to say, and watch out for a potential repeat of them trying to dismantle the FOIA law, because we are seeing some repeat things that failed last time, right? The internet sales tax failed, and, they're going to bring that back. They're going to bring some of these things back that have already been, voted down 2 years ago. And so, do you think that, are you hearing anything, Joey or Matt? Are they going to attempt to dismantle the FOIA law again, or do you think that's kind of dead?
Well, I think we need to be very vigilant. I think that we will see attempts. Senate Bill 373 was this bill where they tried to create basically an attorney-client privilege. You CC your lawyer on these documents, and all of a sudden those records cannot be gotten by the public. I think we'll see that. I think we'll see that again, and the reason I say that is in the FOIA task force meeting, they never said that they weren't going to attempt to bring that that monster up again. And that would have taken us, in my opinion, that would have taken us from the strongest FOIA law in the country to maybe one of the weakest. And we just have to keep our eyes open. I think the FOIA task force, I'm against task force because I think that sometimes they're counterproductive, but I think the FOIA task force, the job that they've done going through all of these bills in the last session, which would have dismantled FOIA, did a great job and basically said, these bills are not in the interest of the public, and they do nothing for accountability, and we've got to fight against them.
Yeah.
So I think we will see more, Paul. I don't think they ever go away.
Yeah.
It's sad. I mean, we've got a group of Republicans who purport to believe in accountability. Well, let's show it. Let's make FOIA stronger. Let's not make FOIA weaker.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, FOIA should apply, Paul, to state legislators. I think they need to go one more step and say that we're going to make the open meetings provision of FOIA apply to state legislators. Why not? Why should they be able? They can videotape all their committee meetings and on the floors. They can video, but when they do their business in the back rooms of the Capitol, big deal. I mean, so let's make FOIA apply. The open meetings apply to state legislators and make them do their business in committee rooms where we can watch, just like local school boards have to. I mean, what's wrong with that idea?
Yeah, and you're kind of you're hitting the nail on the head here. I just got a text that the Municipal League, they support gutting the FOIA for that very reason that you just said. I mean, so they don't have to comply and give the documents to the public. So
Right, yeah.
So we just got to watch out. I'm saying, like, that's gonna be something. I think that's gonna be another battle for sure. And just generally, guys, I think everything you're doing, whether it's the preferred family health care legal exaction or the ecclesia or watching FOIA, seems like, I mean, you guys are kind of on a quest for transparency in government.
Well, Paul, I would say that we're both members of Arkansas Trial Lawyers Association, Trial Lawyers Associated, often get pigeonholed in this or that political side, but I think we're all, most trial lawyers, we're small businessmen, and we're conservative. And I mean classically conservative in the sense that we believe in limited open government. And so I think I think it goes to what Joey believes in for sure, and what I believe in, and what most of the lawyers I know believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very well said. Well,
I agree, absolutely. Trial lawyers are, we've got to hold government accountable, and so yeah, you are right, Matt. I mean, in classically conservative, and citizens should know that they have the ability to hold government accountable. And Winthrop Rockefeller back in the 60s created this mechanism to hold government accountable, and we've got to fight to our last breath to keep records available and to make sure that meetings are occurring in the public when public business is discussed. Paul, the other thing I would say is we're waiting for the Supreme Court right now to make a decision on this secret email case where the city of Fort Smith was conducting public business by way of secret email. It's an epidemic across the state where governments are conducting business either through text messages before meetings or email. So I'm excited and waiting on that decision now, and hopefully it'll be favorable to accountability and transparency.
So, to the first topic, the motion that was filed to dismiss preferred family health care, they don't think this case, so where do we go from here in terms of what are we waiting on next?
Well, we're waiting on us. We file a response, and we have a few more days to do that. We file a response, and the court rules. Now, motions dismissed. In the law, there's a bias toward deciding cases on the merits. In other words, let all the facts be heard, let the jury of the judge hear motion to dismiss, all facts are resolved in our favor. All assumptions are made in the non-moving party. So the court will have a hearing. The court will issue a ruling. If the court moves to dismiss, they give you an opportunity to amend your complaint. And, if the court says, well, you're missing this fact or that fact, you can amend your complaint. If you have that fact, you can add it. And if the court still believes it's dismissed, then we make the decision, do we appeal it up? We appeal it up? If the motion to dismiss is denied, the case goes forward. We go into the discovery phase, which is, I think that's where we send all the questions asking for information about where this money goes. Tell me about this bank account. Tell me about that. And that process, frankly, with as many defendants as we have and as many moving parts over a 7-year fraud scheme at least, maybe longer, that takes a while.
Yeah, that's going to take a while. But, man, and they certainly don't want to go into that process. They don't want to go into discovery. Well, Matt Bishop, Joey McCutcheon, thank you guys for coming on, and keep us posted on what's next, and we'll look forward, and we'll be watching the news and the headlines.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
All righty.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate your work. Folks, we're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Where are they from? How many drugs were actually apprehended there? Well, my question is how much is enough? In 2001, it was 19 terrorists that did all that damage. Mm-hmm. So is it okay to let 10 terrorists in a year or 50 terrorists, or is if 2,400 pounds of fentanyl is not accurate, which is 500 million lethal doses, so would 1,000 pounds be okay with them? There's just no logic to what they're doing. They try to debate the accuracy of numbers and almost deny that there's any problem at all down on the border.
They are denying that there's a problem on the border. They now claim, Congressman Westerman, that to build a barrier, whether it's a wall or a steel-slatted fence, is immoral. But then at the same time, in the same breath, they say, but I'm for border security, but a fence is immoral. Well, if a fence is immoral,
determined
and the
to
goal of
drain
the fence
the
is to...
swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Man, we went over, and by the way, it's up at the Facebook page, the Conduit News Facebook page, this Reason.com article. The media wildly mischaracterized that video of the Covington High School students confronting a Native American veteran. Again, the media continues to make themselves the story, and it's so frustrating, whether it's the Cohen thing and the BuzzFeed story that was wrong, or is it, or if it's just some white kids at the Lincoln Memorial wearing MAGA hats. Well, they must be racists, and they must, it's just so ridiculous. In the meantime, you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that doesn't know where Mitch McConnell's office is. Check out this tweet in this video clip. This is from Fox News. Play it from the beginning, Joe, please.
He's not in the cloakroom. He's not in the Capitol. He's not in the Russell Building. He's not in the...
Yeah, start this over. This is fantastic. Listen to this.
We're roving out to the Senate side because the thing is, we went to his office in the Capitol. We went to his office here in the Russell Building. We went to the floor. He's not. We went to the cloakroom. He's not in the cloakroom. He's not in the Capitol. He's not in the Russell Building. He's not in the floor of the Senate. And 800,000 people don't have their paychecks. So where's Mitch? And just my question.
They couldn't find him because those lawmakers went to the wrong office. McConnell works out of the majority leader's space in the Capitol, which the lawmakers would have needed to pass on their way to the Senate side to try to make their point. And McConnell's folks say they had no advance.
So yeah, that's what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing, and I guess my advice to her: you should have checked the student union. Maybe you should have checked the student union or the Student Government Association, or maybe he was down by the Quad. I don't know, but maybe you'd had more luck. Yeah, or frat house, something like that. All right, we're going to reset here. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back with Justice of the Peace, Mr. Patrick Deakins, back on the program. Always great to have him. And then we'll be talking with Randy Alexander at 7:33, former state representative. He'll be on the program as well. So don't go anywhere. We've got a great second hour coming your way next.
Talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Keep people from getting in. That's the same goal of border security, is to keep people from getting in. So they're not for border security because they think it's immoral. They think they can't eat their cake and have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, to use some of their language, when did they become the moral police? To me, it's immoral that we're allowing the law to be broken, and we're allowing our citizens to be put, their safety to be put in jeopardy because we want to address the real issue that's along the border. And, uninviting the president to the State of the Union address, first time in history, it's really bizarre, some of the things that they're doing. I don't know if you saw this either, but several of us signed a letter to Mitch McConnell and Vice President Pence to invite the president or encourage them to invite the president to do the State of the Union in the Senate chamber. I don't know if that'll gain any traction or not, but at least it would give the president a forum to come in and address Congress and address the nation. But as you know, the Senate chamber is much smaller than the House chamber, so there would be a limited number of people that could actually attend that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I would really, I really hope that the president can give the State of the Union just the way it's supposed to be done. It's, to me, and you feel free to give your input, but to me it just looks like Nancy Pelosi didn't want the president to be given the political respect that he deserves as the president, as the executive, to address the government. You would have had angel moms in the as guests, predictably. Also, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would either be there or she wouldn't be there. Either way, it would be a story. If she was there, it'd be a story because people would be watching her. You hearing anything about Ruth Bader Ginsburg by any chance?
No, it's been kind of quiet lately. But I think you're exactly right, Paul, are on the right track, that they're scared to death of the optics and the message of the president having the stage to address the nation and lay the facts out, and to have those people in the gallery who have been adversely affected by lack of security and the opioid and drug epidemic that we have here. I don't think they want to have to endure that. And, I guess they could have another American Gothic response to it with Nancy and Chuck.
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Nancy and Chuck Gothic response, because President Trump, his speech was incredibly effective, and it was only 8 minutes. Can you imagine how effective he'd be communicating across all networks for an hour? Yeah.
I don't think they want the American people to hear that message.
Wow. Okay, and, so what are we on? We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. Is this day 28 of the government shutdown?
I believe that's correct. Another thing that they've been doing, they've been having these rallies on the steps of the Capitol, where they take their posters out, and they're talking about the government workers that are not getting their paycheck, and which is not right. I've signed on to a bill that if you're an essential worker, you should be paid while you're working. That's even scriptural, that the worker should get his wages. And we shouldn't be asking people to work and not get paid. But then you got the people who are furloughed who aren't getting paid. And I know that causes hardship, but they're trying to make the case that how hard it is on these folks. But think about the people who have lost loved ones to drugs. Think about the little girls that have been sex trafficked, and little boys as well, and all the hardships that are being caused because of the lack of security along the border. So they want to tell one side of the story and try to gain some sympathy from the American people. But I can tell you overwhelmingly the calls that we've gotten in my office have been to, stand strong, build the wall, don't give in to Pelosi.
That was my next question, was the feedback that you're getting from your constituents in Arkansas District 4. What would you say the breakdown is percentage-wise? How many people are saying stand strong versus how many people?
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We're so glad that you're with us. So we were talking last hour with Fort Smith attorneys Joey McCutcheon and Matt Bishop about their lawsuit against Preferred Family Health Care. There's been a motion to dismiss. And then we started talking about Ecclesia College, and we started talking about really just generally transparency and how, and I've said this for a while, in the wake of the corruption of Arkansas politicians, we can't really even talk that good or that the issues that I want to talk about, limited government and that sort of thing. Well, how about just honest government? How about transparent government? And so there are some positive steps that are being taken. And not only just, with streaming the Senate and streaming the committees and that sort of thing, but there are positive steps being taken at the local level as well. And I wanted to identify that and highlight that, really. So I want you to welcome Justice of the Peace, Patrick Deakins of Springdale is on the phone. Patrick, it's great to have you back on, sir.
Paul, it's been too long. I'm ready to take another ride on the Liberty Machine.
Yes, yes, sir. It has. It has been way too long. Now, first of all, Patrick, fill everybody in on what you're doing now and why you decided to run for Justice of the Peace in Washington County.
Yeah, Paul, this will be my first term on the quorum court. So I just got started in January and got a couple meetings under my belt. The first one was an organizational meeting, and then last Thursday we had our regular January monthly meeting. And I just saw a lot of challenges that maybe Washington County is going to have over the next couple of years, and some tough decisions are going to have to be made. And I thought it was time to get involved and try to help out as much as I could. For that process.
Well, one of those has to do with is it a bond issue that's coming up?
Well, it's potentially a bond issue. One of the biggest challenges that Washington County has is that our jail is at capacity. We're going to have to make some sort of decision there on the jail, and so I think Sheriff Hilder has a plan that he wants to see implemented, and it would include a bond issue and quite possibly sales tax increases to pay for that. And so he has that plan, and it's time for us to try to, as a quorum court, look at what we think we could do and try to get something decided there.
I understand. Well,
Nothing's there yet. Nothing's there yet, but those ordinances are definitely drafted, and they are sitting there, and so it's time for us to try to, as a quorum court, get in there and roll our sleeves up and see if we can't put a different eye on that approach.
So I saw this opinion piece by the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette, a guy by the name of Greg Harton. His headline, Quorum Court, Transparency Vital Later. I read this piece, and for some reason I get the feeling that Greg Harton is, not a fan of yours, Patrick. What do you think?
Well, I think he's definitely come at me with an eye of skepticism, which is fine. I don't, I being new to this process and stuff like that, I understand people need to get a feel for me and understand what my motives are. And so, yeah, the piece was interesting, and to say the least, I think that people, and I think after I read it, I think people are very skeptical of our government. It's probably for these issues that you highlight on your show all the time with corruption and the ecclesia stuff. And so now, anytime a person comes up with major changes that they want to do, I think people automatically want to assume the worst. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about, you say major change. So what did you do the other night? Like what major changes are you I guess, what is it, how a bill's passed or how a resolution is passed or adopted?
Yeah, well, in the quorum court, we handle
ordinances.
So
that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what my ordinance did, the ordinance that I supported and got passed, was I want us to, as justices of the peace, when we bring ordinances or legislation to the quorum court, I want those ordinances to be put on the agenda and made public as much time in advance as we can, so that people can see them. What had been happening and what had started to become too customary in my mind is that justices or other people would bring these ordinances to us as a quorum court at the very meeting that we were being asked to decide upon these ordinances.
Wow.
So you can understand that that's extremely unfair to put any justice into that position to try to deliberate and make a great decision on something that might have a huge impact for Washington County. And so, to me, my legislation I thought was pretty simple, straightforward, but once again, sometimes I think people can be very skeptical. The other thing I really would like for all of our ordinances to do is go through, we will have 4 standing committees in this term, Budget and Finance, Jails and Law Enforcement, County Services, and Personnel. And I think that any of the ordinances should first have to go to one of those 4 standing committees to be reviewed and looked at. Because, it's my thought that those justices that serve on those committees will have the expertise and the knowledge to address those specific ordinances.
So this was your ordinance, and you got this passed last week?
Yeah, yep, we did it.
Wow.
And I think that was probably that's Mr. Harton's big criticism is that ordinances, if you, unless you suspend the rules, have to have 3 readings. And so, just in the interest of time and me wanting to get these committees going and get on the right track from the very start, I suspended the 3 readings, and I had the votes to get that ordinance passed all last Thursday night. So yeah, that's new for us. We're going to operate differently.
And I think that's great from now on. But you use the old rules in order to get the new rules in place, and that's the criticism. I mean, what I mean? What other system are you supposed to operate under?
I don't know.
It was just a baseless criticism. You could just tell that it was a contrived. Mr. Harton here, just contrived outrage at somebody who's coming in and trying to, really slow the process down. Sounds like if you have to now go through a committee, that's a good thing.
Correct. Yes, and I mean, and like I'm saying, especially with some of these jail issues and stuff, we're going to have a lot of budgetary issues in Washington County and some things that we want to decide on. So yeah, I'm just trying to slow the process down, make sure everybody's on the same page and has as much information. I guess the only criticism, yes, you can have is that I utilized our broken system to fix itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was the only goal there.
I think that's genius. What about your background? No, go ahead. Finish. Well, let me ask you this. Your background as a CPA, how does that help you as a justice of the peace?
Well, I think it gives me a lot more perspective when I'm looking at numbers, on a spreadsheet. To many people that can be, if nothing else, kind of boring. But sometimes I can see those numbers and I can look at them and glean a little bit more, even off just an initial look, than maybe some other people who don't work around that type of stuff every day. And so also I look at things where I want all of our spending to be sustainable. Not really sure that we're there with Washington County's budget, that we could do this year after year after year, growing this budget. And so that's the other thing. I want to also have a long-term look on some of this budget, make sure that, we're not just the budget's not growing too fast, that we have the discipline, the fiscal discipline to make Washington County great for years and years and years to come. And that's really what's driving me right now.
So do you think, you say the budget is continuing to grow. Is that because tax revenue is up? And you were talking earlier that there is some talk about raising taxes here or there. I mean, that to me would make me as a conservative kind of upset.
Well, absolutely, and let's think about it. In my mind, the county tax-based revenue ought to adjust itself as property improvements come in. You're getting more development. That there's automatic adjustments in that if we think like that. And the same thing is true of the sales taxes. People want to say, well, we need to grow the budget because there's more people in this area. They moved in, and I can understand all that to a very good point. But at the same time, I don't understand the tax increase side of it. Why do we need to keep increasing the tax rate? Why can we not just grow within our own means, in our own limits, if that makes sense? So, yeah, that's what's concerning me right now. Is does it make sense? Are we doing everything as efficiently as we can? Is the county doing things that maybe the government shouldn't be doing at all? Or, all those things I think are on the table. I think we've got a great court right now. There's a lot of sharp people on that. I think there's a lot of bipartisanship right now to help work with each other. And so I think we are very motivated to just to just look at the county from top to bottom and see what we think about all these issues and these services that we're providing.
Were your colleagues, they were pleased with this idea to change the way an ordinance is passed?
Yeah, I think everybody sees the good in this and sees the basis for why we need to make this change, because they're just as frustrated as anybody. If something gets brought to us at the last minute, and like I'm saying, we have to sit there and make a decision on it. So I think they can see that this was needed. This was a good change. This is for positive, and it was just for transparency, Paul. Just trying to help people out and let the public know more about what their government's doing at any given time.
That's fantastic, and that's why I want to have you on, Patrick, because we have to have transparency at all levels of government, and maybe there's some other counties listening and they want to do something similar, or maybe they have ideas. I just think it's fantastic. The process is really, you've made it more deliberative. You're not going to have a growth in government, overnight. You know what I mean? Like it's going to have to go through a process, and I think that's the way it should be. And I really appreciate you, stepping up and and running and trying to, really sounds like bring a new day to the Washington County Quorum Court.
Yep, we're changing the way we're going to do things, Paul, and it's just for the people. And I'm honored that the people of District 5 in Washington County put me in this position. I hope to serve them with integrity and hard work and do everything that I said I was going to do, which is work really, really hard for the people of Washington County.
All right, Patrick Deakins, best of luck to you, sir. Keep us posted.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right, thank you. Folks, that is Mr. Patrick Deakins. You first heard him, I think, on our our Conservative Future segment. Yeah, I mean, it's when he came on. That was, what was that, a couple years ago, something like that? Yeah, it's pretty cool to see him now in public office and, changing the way things are being done. And it's not often that you, in a first term in anything, are able to go in and make changes. That's another thing this is so wild to me. You go down as we were just talking last week about the freshman state reps that are down at the Marble Palace and how they're having to figure things out. But he goes in there, and a quorum court, I mean, your basic job is money and budget, and so he's a CPA. Anyway, fantastic stuff. All right, we're going to take a break, going to reset here. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with former State Representative Randy Alexander about former Senator from Oklahoma, Tom Coburn, coming to Arkansas this week. Back in just a moment.
We're saying, cave and don't fund the border wall.
I would say it's 90% plus saying stand strong.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I got a lot of sympathy, especially for people who are hardworking Americans that happen to be working for the federal government that are out there doing their job. They should be getting paid, and I think there's ways we could do that, especially in some agencies with fees that are available. And again, I've signed on to a bill that would actually pay those workers while they're working.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the other thing different about this, and again, this is a partial government shutdown. Over 75% of the government is funded, and this administration is working as hard as they can to minimize any interruptions. During the Obama shutdown.
Times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly will continue tomorrow when they reconvene. Today's Martin Luther King Day, isn't it? It is. I think today is Martin Luther King Day. That's why they're not meeting today. Yeah, I mean, look at Google. You just go to Google, the front page, they've got Martin Luther King's face there. Yeah. So, Anyway, isn't it weird? It's Martin Luther King Day. Judge somebody by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, and yet you had these Catholic boys who are being just completely called crackers and it's just nuts. It's like absolutely crazy that was the news. And the media, of course, got it wrong. We talked about this at 6. You can get the podcast if you want. But a lot of people wondering, as far as the Arkansas General Assembly goes, what's next? What bill will be filed this week? Will there be a are we going to see the internet sales tax yet? Are we going to see more on the minimum wage? Who knows? Are we going to see the gasoline tax? I mean, what's going to happen? Where's this going to happen? I was in one of the committees, I think on Thursday. I was in the Rev and Tax Committee on Thursday, and this week you will start to see pieces of legislation this week. So I'm most interested in what's going to be proposed tax. Is it going to be one big package, or is it going to be one bill at a time? It's going to be interesting to see. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to once again have State Representative Stephen Meeks on. He has filed House Bill 1177, and it is concerning microchip implantation of employees. And it says the legislation would prohibit employers from forcing employees to have microchips implanted as a condition of employment. In addition, the employer would cover all costs associated with the microchip. If employees requested to have the microchip removed, the company must remove it within 30 days. Furthermore, all information collected and used by the microchip must also be disclosed to the employee. State Representative Meeks is the chairman of the Technology Committee. In addition, Meeks works as a computer technologist. Meeks' background in technology includes an Associate of Science degree in telecommunications engineering. Meeks is a Republican from Greenbrier, represents House District 67, which includes Greenbrier, Holland, Valonia, Worcester, and Western Conway. His brother David Meeks is the Republican. David isn't. I don't think he's the because he didn't run for re-election, so he's a former. But anyway, if you want more like legislative alerts, things like that, you can text JOIN to 501-292-2683. That's text to JOIN to 501-292-2683 if you want to know about the different bills and things that are coming down the pike in the next couple of months. We would love for you to do that. So we'll be talking to him. Now, also, tomorrow on the program, we'll be interviewing Mr. Josh Waters, who was down in Little Rock with us last week, but we're going to be talking to him about the scorecard. So Conduit will put out its scorecard of bills that are on the radar. Does it grow government? Does it spend money we don't have? Does it increase dependency on government? Those three things, that's your economic freedom filter. It's important to remember that, okay? Does it grow government? Does it increase dependency on government? Does it spend money we don't have? That's your economic freedom filter. So it's based on those three things as to whether or not a bill is going to show up, and be scored. In terms of, this is a good bill or this is a bad bill. It could be either one on there. So we're going to be watching that as well. Excuse me. Let's see here. If we go over to the headline here at Breitbart.com, left wing and the right attack kids to demonstrate virtue. Now, Joe, you've watched the video, you've read the statements, and he was back there when we were talking about this, outraged. Nobody is saying that these are children. I mean, I know they look to be upperclassmen, in their high school, but that we have adults who are trying to bait them into fighting is really what the story is here. You had the black nationalists combined with the Native American who was beating the drum, and nobody's really you brought it up, Joe, that these are adults that are, and we're putting more in, but these are just kids, right? I mean, that's the point you were making, right?
Yeah. So in the piece that we were reading earlier from
Reason.
Yeah, from Reason.com, at the very bottom there is a statement from the young man who is the one that's being persecuted the hardest.
Mm-hmm. They're doxing these kids. They're trying to expose their addresses.
Like,
and
he's openly said that he himself has gotten physical and death threats over social media. Someone claiming to even be from his own neighborhood, like he knows where he lives. His parents have gotten professional and physical threats of violence as well. All these different
professional.
Yeah, so like firing, like people are calling for them to be fired from their jobs. and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because gosh.
Yeah, so like this is going deeper than just with him. It's going to his family as well, and his family has done nothing. And I've seen the video, I've read his statement, I have read other things, and from what I can tell, his statement is factually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
He was not provoking anyone. He was just there.
Mm-hmm.
Phillips, the main leader of the Native American group, locked eyes with this kid and began to walk towards him, beating his drum.
And that was the photo, and that's what.
And got really close to his face. And the kid even said that during that, his entire demeanor was, "This is escalated beyond something that it was supposed to be. I'm going to remain calm and not try to make this worse."
Mm-hmm.
To the point where one of his fellow students got engaged with one of the protesters at one point, and he even like motioned him to stop, like quit, like don't make this worse. And one of the things that the people are getting on them about is the chanting that they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever initiated the chanting on their side, it's all school affiliated chants that they do for sporting events, and they're all positive. None of it's negative. Like, they asked permission from their chaperones to make sure that it was okay for them to start even doing that.
Their chants, and they have, and the best point that Reason brought up was, put yourself in that position. When the Native American Phillips comes up and starts banging the drum, the kids at first didn't know if he was doing it in a positive way, like, "Hey, I'm banging my drum," and it was confusing. It would be confused, like you could see some of the kids in the video. Oh, is he on our side or is he against us?
They found out real quick that that he was against him, not in the fact of what happened physically, like how he approached them, but what was being said to them. They were told that they should go back to Europe. And that we stole their land.
Yeah.
As in,
and then you had the black nationalists that had, for an hour and 45 minutes, were shouting slurs and stuff at the white kids for wearing "Make America Great Again" hats. It's a crazy world we live in.
We're saying, cave and don't fund the border wall.
I would say it's 90% plus saying stand strong.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I got a lot of sympathy, especially for people who are hardworking Americans that happen to be working for the federal government, that are out there doing their job. They should be getting paid, and I think there's ways we could do that, especially in some agencies with fees that are available. And again, I've signed on to a bill that would actually pay those workers while they're working.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the other thing different about this, and again, this is a partial government shutdown. Over 75% of the government is funded, and this administration is working as hard as they can to minimize any interruptions. During the Obama shutdown, I remember them putting up barricades around out on the mall. I know that the thing that really was unbelievable to me over in Garland County, where I live on Lake Ouachita, Corps of Engineers was going out and blocking boat ramps since the government was shut down.
And
anybody.
I remember that under the Obama shutdown, they were told to do that. You had an anonymous park ranger for one of these parks that was told by his superiors that the president wants to make the shutdown as painful as possible for the American people. I mean, they were even, I think that there was, they violated a state law because Mount Rushmore, there was a part that was the state's ground, and they were not letting people pull over on the side of the road where they could gaze at Mount Rushmore because everything was so contrived. We've got to make people know that they depend on government. And Bruce, I'm like you. I hurt for those families that are trying to figure out how to make their mortgage payment because they're working for the federal government. But for the average American, I think with the government shut down, most people's lives have not been that affected by it. I mean, there are exceptions, airport terminals and things like that, but for the most part, kind of showing us that, we can have a smaller government and things are going to be okay.
Yeah, and there eventually will be some major disruption. Some of the ag programs, but again, the administration has called some of those officials back in and said their job's essential, and it eventually will cause problems, and we need to get the government back up and running. But the thing about it, Paul, is as the president has said, this could be done in a 45-minute meeting, and the amount of money that's being asked for. $5 billion is a lot of money, but it's nothing compared to the
All right, we're about to be talking with former State Representative Randy Alexander. We were just connected with him, but we had a drop off, so stand by on that. Coming up later in the week, I want to talk about Governor Asa Hutchinson's op-ed in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette back on the 18th. Headline: Asa Hutchinson investing in the state. Pretty interesting insight into what he believes when it comes to economic development. But in the article, I'll have to make sure, but I read the article. I didn't hear him mention anything about Chinese incentives and that sort of thing, but he is very much for incentives, when it comes, meaning corporate welfare is what it is. You can't really call it anything else. Anyway, we're going to talk about that later in the week, so you want to definitely stay tuned for that. Hey, folks, joining us now, we have former state representative here in Arkansas, Randy Alexander, is with us. Randy, how are you, sir?
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Randy. So talk to us a little bit about, now, I mean, I know it's kind of can be a controversial issue among conservatives, but you are a big proponent and are part of the Convention of States organization, are you not?
Yes, I am, and I started out like some of the opponents did. I was told that it was a dangerous process. I haven't met hardly anyone who disagrees with what it's trying to do. Their concern is that somebody could take over the process and damage our Constitution. And that's kind of where I started. But after doing a few years of research and talking to some of the experts in the country on this, I'm now convinced that is completely false, and there is nothing logically that should prevent us from using this tool that the founders gave us.
Well, so let's talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But I know a big proponent of this is Tom Coburn, right? A former senator from Oklahoma.
That's correct. Senator Coburn is actually going to be with us in Arkansas next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
In Little Rock.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Wednesday the 23rd at 7 p.m. He will be speaking to a town hall at the Holiday Inn Presidential, which is just off of I-30 there at 600 I-30. And he was supposed to come December 8th, and then because we anticipated some bad weather and he was driving, we had to cancel that. But we rescheduled that for this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. And I think we're also going to be joined by Mark Meckler, who is the National Director of Convention of States.
Okay.
He's coming in the following day to testify before the Senate State Agencies Committee.
So there's going to be a Convention of States bill, I guess. And so has that already been filed?
The Senate version has been filed. It's actually a joint resolution. Joint resolutions are approved by the two chambers. They don't require a governor's signature, and whichever one passes both chambers first is the one that we'll go with. We're introducing the Senate version on Thursday morning at 10 a.m., and then we'll have a rally at the state capitol at noon on the 24th. So 2 big days coming up.
Yeah, who's the sponsor of that piece of legislation on the Senate side?
Senator Gary Stubblefield is our Senate sponsor. He's been the sponsor. He was the sponsor in 2017 and also 15, the first time it was introduced. And in the House, our sponsor is Representative Austin McCullum.
Okay. Well, those are both great legislators, you know, and
they're excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what the argument's going to be. I mean, so let's get back to the argument at hand. Okay, idea of a runaway convention. Now, I have had, just kind of like you, Randy, I've had like an evolving opinion about this. Okay, let me just tell you what my opinion was. First was like absolutely yes, it's in the Constitution. And it is, you know, it's there for a reason, and we need to try to do this. But then, as I started covering the politics in Little Rock, I started thinking to myself, I can't trust a lot of these Republicans to actually be Republicans. I don't know if I would trust who they would send to be a delegate in this thing. And so then I was against it because, well, I just don't know if, you know, I trust, I'm so displeased with my own local government. I don't want them making any decisions, to have an amendment convention. And to be quite honest, where I am now personally, Randy, at this point, and you can call me unprincipled, and that's fine. You know, now that President Trump is the president, I just am not as interested. You know, and so can you address that? Have you seen kind of a decrease in interest because Republicans are winning so much that we're getting tired of it?
No, actually interest is growing. When we started in 2011, the first year, we had 1,500 people statewide who had signed our Convention of States petition. Let's see, that was 2013, and 15, that had jumped to 15,000, and as of last week, we were up over 17,000, and the number of petition signings we're getting per day used to be 4, 5, 6, it's about 25 a day now. So we're getting more than 100 petitions a week in Arkansas. All of those numbers I just gave you are just Arkansas. So we have over 17,000, and we're picking up about 20 to 25 a day, 100 a week plus.
Wow.
So interest is actually growing. Now, the other thing you mentioned about, I'm not sure I trust these legislators. Yes, I've heard that before, and actually I've heard that from a few legislators who are concerned. They support it, but they're not sure who they would send. But you know, there's never a perfect system, and I can tell you that I think the support for this movement is growing. I was able to attend one of the first meetings that they had in, I think it was 2014, called the Mount Vernon Assembly. It was at the Mount Vernon Library. And we had delegates there from like 38 different states and legislators. And I can tell you that group was fired up. They wanted to do this. They wanted to push back against the federal government, which they all felt was way beyond its constitutional boundaries. And then Convention of States actually held a I don't know what you'd call it, not a mock, but a simulated Convention of States a year ago, last September, not last September, but the year before. And it went extremely well. 3 of our legislators from Arkansas attended it. They came back really pumped up. And I think the thing that people don't realize is if we get to the point where we will have a convention of states and people are introducing legislation that does one of three things. It imposes fiscal restraints on the federal government. It reduces the power and scope of the federal government. And then finally, it enacts term limits. People are excited about that. I hear all the time from people in various walks of life that express a lot of concern about where our country is. You know, I talked to teachers who said, man, the federal government is ruining education. We don't have time to teach anymore with all the hoops that we have to jump through. You talk to small business owners, and yes, we had some improvement here in the last few years, but what happens if we lose the next election? And small business owners talk about how difficult it is to be successful with all the regulations that some bureaucrat in Washington who knows absolutely nothing about the business they have is making decisions that they have to follow.
Yeah.
And then parents and grandparents, you know, right now our national debt is up to, I believe it's $60,000 a person. And that's not a voter. That's every man, woman, child, infant in the United States. So my son and his wife and my three grandsons combined, their portion of the national debt is $300,000 today. And as we all know, it's going up every day. There's a lot of reasons people are concerned about this and are ready to get on board.
Well, and you know, you have the inaction. You do have the inaction of Congress on some of these issues, or at least the gridlock goes. You know, the idea that Congress is going to, you know, ever vote for term limits is not. That's just never going to happen.
No.
But so let me ask you this though. The people who are concerned about a runaway convention, wasn't that what the first one was in 1787?
No, and that's a common misperception. There are two myths that go around related to the first convention. One is that it was a runaway because they were only supposed to amend the Articles of Confederation, and the other was that it was improperly passed because it took a unanimous vote, people say, to pass it, because back then the different 13 states functioned like sovereign nations.
But they didn't amend the Articles of Confederation, did they? They didn't actually do that.
They didn't, and that wasn't actually their charge. If you go back and look at the actual language that came out of the, if I'm remembering, the Annapolis Convention that told them what their charge was, and I'm drawing a blank now on the exact language, but it's clear that what they said was, we need to render the Articles of Confederation, what was the word? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
No, it's okay. I understand.
But the bottom line is, if you look at the actual historical record, and we have that, they did not, we do not have an illegitimate constitution. They followed the orders. And as far as the unanimous vote that's required, they voted unanimously to accept a lower threshold for adopting a constitution. So I think they went from 13 to 9, if I remember correctly. But they followed the process, and it is that myth, ironically, was started by liberal progressives who wanted to prevent usage of the Convention of States because they feared that some of the gains they'd made through the courts and things like that would get overturned.
I'm glad that you brought the courts up, Randy. So let's say in a perfect world, by the way, I mean, the fact that we even have the Constitution at all is really, I mean, it's a miracle that we were able to even, form the Union the way we did. So what we're talking about here with Convention of States, being able to do something like this is a huge historical undertaking, and I think that's why everybody's being so cautious about it. But I was talking to a guy down in Little Rock the other day about this, and he said, I just am worried that the courts would get involved. He says, I'm not for it because, the courts are going to get involved just like they get involved with everything, and somebody's going to sue and want to do something else, like want to add something else to it, and it'll go to court, and these liberal judges will, uphold it. And so have you heard that as a criticism?
Yes, I've heard that, and I've heard that Congress, using its Article I powers, will step in and take over the process and do whatever they want to. We don't have time to go line by line, but there's all kinds of safeguards that are rooted in either the historical record. These kind of meetings among states were common prior to our Constitution and for several years after. And there were a precedent. There are guidelines that they follow. The court has absolutely no role in the process, none. Congress' role is simply ministerial. And if you look at Article 5, and it's not very long, it's very short, and you read what it actually says, there are, in addition to the several safeguards, Article 5 itself is very safe. It basically says about 4 points. The U.S. Constitution may be amended. 2/3 of Congress may propose amendments, and that word propose is key. 2/3 of the states can call for a convention to propose amendments, and any amendments proposed, whether by Congress or the states, must be ratified by 3/4 of the states. That's 38 states. That's the biggest safeguard of all. Getting 38 states to agree on anything. It's a challenge. There's been like 2,500 amendments proposed over the history of our country. And after the Bill of Rights, we've had another 17 out of that. So
yeah,
it's a safe process.
Hey,
the one other point I want to
make
about that, because the most common thing I hear is Congress will take it over. Well, first of all, that's not logical. Why would Congress try to take over a process to propose amendments when the Constitution already gives them the authority to propose amendments? And then the other point is,
I would just think that they would try to take over to control the outcome, to step in and stop the good stuff from happening and derail the process.
And I can assure you that the Convention of States would simply ignore anything they had to say. And that's quite evident to me from talking to the people that are supporting this and legislators from around the country that are supporting this, because they know what the rules say. And actually, the courts have ruled in favor of Convention of States precedent many times. The courts are not good. The Supreme Court is not good at dealing with broad topics. But on process and detail, their record is actually pretty good. Let me give you one example of the decision, this idea that Congress can step in under its Article I powers and use the necessary and proper clause to take over the convention. This specific question has actually been adjudicated in federal court, Idaho versus Freeman, in 1981. And this is what the decision summary statement says. Quote, thus Congress, outside of the authority granted by Article 5, has no power to act with regard to an amendment. It does not retain any of its traditional authority vested to it by Article 1. So they have a ministerial role. When 34 states, 2/3, call for a convention of states for the same purpose, they have to call it. They set the time and the place, and then they can also choose which of the two modes of ratification that are in the Constitution are used. Both of them have been used before. We'll recommend that the state legislatures vote, but they could also say you have a state convention.
Yeah.
So, and that's their role.
It's certainly, we're about to run out of time. It's certainly in the Constitution. They put it there for a reason. I don't know though, Randy, if they ever knew that the government was going to be as big and lopsided as it is. But maybe, I mean, I know the purpose was to, put the Article 5 in there so the people have a different path if things go really bad. But is there a point where they get so bad that even attempting to do it, is it impossible? I think that's what a lot of people are worried about, because you're dealing with their rights. Now, and I'll let you respond to that and give you the last word, but to the original convention, I do have somebody on Facebook, you can tell me if you agree or disagree with this, Randy, that said the actual instructions of the first Constitutional Convention were to improve trade and commerce between the states with a 3/4 vote. They immediately changed that to a 2/3 vote and threw out the Articles of Confederation. Is that accurate? Do you know if that's accurate?
No. That is not the language that they were given.
I mean, I'm talking about really more the vote threshold. 3/3.
The vote threshold was changed. What they say is not actually correct. Originally, when the states met, when you had the 13 colonies, not states, when they adopted something that affected all of them, it had to be a unanimous vote. And so one of the first votes they took unanimously was to have a lower threshold for approving the Constitution. I think it was 13-9. And again, I'm not exactly sure of that, but it was lowered because they realized you'll never get 100% to vote for something like this.
Yeah.
So I would disagree with that. What actually happened, how we got this part of Article 5.
We got about a minute, Randy. I'm sorry.
Okay. In the Philadelphia Convention of 1787, the Constitution was approved on September 17th. 2 days before that, Colonel George Mason, a delegate from Virginia, stood up and said, basically, wait a minute, and we get this from James Madison's notes. He was the secretary. He said, what will happen if the federal government is the problem? What if we need amendments to protect the balance of power and protect the states that the federal government will refuse to propose? And so he moved that the states, if 2/3 of the states call for a convention of states, they could basically go around the federal government. And the delegates unanimously approved that amendment.
Randy, I really appreciate you coming on, sir. It's always great to talk, and I know it's a very, very, deep issue, this idea of convention of states. Real quick, Tom Coburn coming to Arkansas next Wednesday. Is that correct?
He will be here Wednesday night at 7 p.m.
Now, is that this Wednesday or next Wednesday?
That's this coming Wednesday.
Okay.
So
he is
23rd,
here this week. Okay, the 23rd. Okay, go ahead.
He's here this week, the 23rd, for a Convention of States town hall, and he will answer any questions anyone has about the process. And he's one of these guys that he left his Senate position early.
Yeah.
And he will tell you, I've talked to him about it, he said, I was wasting my time. Congress will never approve even legislation, much less an amendment that's going to reduce its power.
Randy, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. Folks, we got to take a break.
I appreciate it.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
$3 trillion that the federal government spends every year. You know, there was a disaster relief package that was voted on this week that was $12 to $13 billion, and it hardly made the news.
Let me ask you this last question: do you think, in light of the government workers, you know, who are not getting paid right now, you think President Trump did the right thing yesterday when he said, you know what, Nancy, you don't think you should go to, you know, you shouldn't be spending all this money and going, you know, using the military to go to, you know, take all the Democrats really out to party. And I say that because we have evidence from back when she was Speaker before that her military flights were pretty much booze cruises.
Well, I think he drove a point home that he.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. Hey, we'll be here tomorrow bright and early with bells on, giving you the latest news and updates of the day. To go over our guests for tomorrow real quick, just so you know, we've already mentioned that we'll be talking with Josh Waters, going over the Conduit for Action weekly scorecard. You don't want to miss that. Also, we'll be talking with Stephen Meeks about his microchip bill, which is interesting. Then at 6:30, backing up like 6:33, we'll have Mr. Dan Perkins back on to analyze a little bit about what's been going on with some of these national stories. One in particular is that the government shut down, upending the State of the Union speech. Nancy Pelosi, that back and forth, but there's actually a lot more to talk about. The news has been crazy the last few days. So anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Go to conduitnews.com and you can get all of your information there, get the podcast, the video archives, and if you want legislative updates sent to your phone, you need to text JOIN to 501-292-2683. That's 501-292-2683. Text JOIN if you want to get legislative updates about what's going on in your name in Arkansas. Folks, Arkansas, be safe.